But why did you become a pastor?
Around about 17, 18, the Lord really got hold of me, and I just knew I wanted to be a preacher, even though I was not gifted. So I went to this open air meeting in another city. I was standing there in the crowd, and the guy that was up on the platform, he pointed at me and he said, "Colin Campbell, would you come up here and tell everybody what Jesus Christ means to you?" I was so shy, I was so timid, I was awful. And finally I made my way up there and I thought, I'll just say John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. But I couldn't say it like that. I made a fool of myself saying it. It was so bad, I felt sorry for myself. I went home and I had this cry within my spirit to become a preacher. That night, and I opened my Bible, and there it was, "For with man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible," just came out to me.
This is The Party with Serene and Pearl. Get it right, Poddy.
Hey, here we are, and we are introducing ourselves because there's no Danny on our
I know,
expert
that's why I
party.
was like, looking at you, you were looking at me, we're like, who's going to do the intro?
But we are so excited because this is the bonus parties where we have expert guests, and today we do have an expert guest, and that is the expert who is the expert at being our father, our dad.
But not only that, I mean, most of all, because he's been an expert dad, but secondly, because he is an expert optimist. In fact, we called him, growing up, besides from Dad, we called him Mr. Micawber. Now, where did that come from? A Charles Dickens novel, was it? Yeah. And that particular character, what about him? But we just, Mr. Micawber, it just meant
I've
that
never
he
read
was the
about
most
him. I've never
positive
heard of him apart from everybody
character.
calling me Mr. Micawber.
Yeah, so
Because let me just say one
can
thing.
we say hello to Dad?
Yeah, but just wait. I'm going to explain Mr. Micawber. Because every time Dad went to the mail to get the just regular mail where bills will come and whatever, he'd always be like, could be my $1 million.
Yep.
Every time he went to the mail, my $1 million could be in there.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for it.
Yes.
I'm still waiting for it. It'll come.
With
though.
just as much hope too.
It will come.
So we have never introduced you to our crowd, Dad, and you. So I want to just say hi and say hi to all our hundreds of thousands of women.
It's an honor to be here, especially with my two wonderful daughters, Serene and Pearl, Pearl and Serene. Just amazing daughters. I'm so proud of them and all that they have achieved in life, and makes me very, very proud, actually. And so here I am, just who I am, Mr. Micawber,
Well, we're gonna
the big optimist.
We're going to pull so many stories out of Dad today because Dad has. Well, yeah, we want to pull out why he's such an optimist guy and why he's sitting here with such a happy, shining face, because Dad is one of the most positive people I've ever known and learned from. Dad, I learn from you all the time. But we want to hear your stories, and also we want to say right now that there would be no trim, healthy mama without this man right
none.
here.
In fact, we've often said, we've got our crunchy DNA from our mother's side because our mum was, the first generation crunchy. She baked
Mum
the whole
wasn't. She
bread.
was
No,
second.
Just wait. Yeah, second. I was going to go back that way, but maybe the math
You're
was
wrong,
wrong.
yeah.
Okay. Well, she was second. She did the homemade bread and then the homemade yogurt and then the homemade everything. And we went to school with the homemade bread and the leftover salad from the night before, right? But then her mum before that, she was all crunchy plus. But Dad, one of my main memories of Dad is him sitting in the kitchen reading out the latest excerpts of like Prevention magazine and all any of these latest things that are coming out, and he'd be, listen to this, girls, this herb is meant to save your life and this herb is meant to do this, and he'd make us listen as he reads all through.
You still do that, Dad?
I still do it, and I still love to get hold of magazines on the latest thing on health. I just think that maybe one day I could be rejuvenated to the point where I'm just a real young man again.
That's right.
And I think it is possible. Some people don't look forward to that, but actually I would quite enjoy it.
And
really.
you're 84, right, Dad?
I'm 84 years of age. My wife says 84 years young, but I am 84 years old, I guess. But I still feel very young, and thanks to my daughters, and thanks to my dear wife, who constantly pester me about good health.
See, That's the thing about Dad, you see. He has this side of him that loves to research health, and we got that through his DNA. And also, if you go to his bathroom and open his cupboard, it's like going into a health spa.
It's GNC. That's what
it is. GNC. It's got every product that's going to make him young and make him virile and make him like the best guy in the universe. But I think he uses it while the placebo works and on to the next product. So it's filled with his products. But 50% all of this, and then 50% loves to sneak off and have his fast food.
Dad's a sneaker.
McDonald's.
Your favorite food, listen, you've made it to 84 and you're going to, like, by God's grace, make it a lot long because of your vigor and your attitude, and because I believe just God shines through you. So he wants to live a bit longer here through your vessel. But your favorite food, Dad, is probably truck stop food, right?
Yes. I have my favorite food is kind of like everybody would say, we saw Colin Campbell and we won't. Yeah. He told us not to tell anybody. Yeah. But Colin Campbell, we met him at McDonald's.
Yeah.
And he said, don't tell my wife.
And don't tell my
or
girls.
my daughters. Yes.
Do you remember the only time you brought me to tears, Dad? Because, we've had a great relationship, great friends. But I remember, before I learned to relax, Pearl kind of cut my purest edges off, being her best friend, because she's more of a drive-through, so more of a relaxed approach to health. Well, I was the Spartan and like the purist that had no room for any mistakes in the purism. And I remember, so when I was in the height of that personality, and we first came to America and we were driving around America, and you and Mum were itinerant speaking and we were singing. And anyway, I remember you eating your truck stop food in the car.
And Serene was
crying over it, like you were, like it was. I was just crying, like I was going to lose my dad, like mourning for him already.
Do you remember that, Dad? She would cry.
I do, and I remember how Serene was so strict on health food, and I don't know why she was so strict, but she surely was. I think she might have lost a little bit of it now.
Oh yeah,
with the children.
But
boy, she was strict. I remember us going to a place in Louisiana somewhere. And we were at a restaurant there in Louisiana. There were people smoking all around us. You were just about freaking out, almost fainting.
Yeah, like at 12 years old.
And wanting to get out of that place because the smoking was going to cause you to get cancer. Yeah. Smoking was going to be so unhealthy. Oh, my goodness.
Serene had no grace. Well, this is going to be about Dad, but we'll get off Serene in a minute.
Me.
We'll start letting Dad talk, but because Dad is here, we want to talk more. Okay,
That's
but
great.
Serene, wouldn't she do it? Every time someone would smoke in her life, Serene would make these big, violent movements in front of the person, like... and walk past the person holding her breath and trying to like push the smoke away, and the poor person like...
I think it was like if you smoke, you're going to hell straight away. Pretty bad.
Enough about me. Back to Dad.
But okay, so we want to hear your story, Dad, about your life, because it's kind of a great life, and the reason we're here is because of your American dream. All our lives, you told us that you loved America, even though you were born in New Zealand. I'm going to go back to that, on a farm in New Zealand. Why? What is it? Why are we all here, Dad? Why did you love America so much?
Trim Healthy Mama, product news and notes.
Do you know an inspiring man who deserves to be honored this Father's Day? Well, we want to meet him. Nominate the undefeated man in your life. Maybe he's your husband, maybe he's your dad, grandfather, brother, friend, for the Undefeated Men Father's Day contest.
We have our dad on the show as a guest for our Father's Day tribute. We're nominating him to be the best dad because we think he is. But we want to hear from you. And we want you to nominate your dad, husband for our Undefeated Men's Challenge. And we want to hear your tribute speech.
Yeah, many men have amazing stories that deserve celebration. And we honor not only biological fathers, but also those who step into that role and provide love and guidance. And Undefeated Men, they're our brother company here to Trim Healthy Mama, and we're teaming up to do this. So all you Trim Healthy Mamas, nominate your man and go to the link in the show notes, and or on YouTube in the show notes, or in the description on audio. I don't know, but you'll figure it out. and that's where you'll submit your nomination. And hey, we need to talk about the prizes. They're so awesome.
Show me. Let me read out. I like reading out prizes.
So, hey, the prizes are grand. not only can you win a whole Undefeated Men gift basket with all the merch, like
I'm telling you, their stuff is awesome.
it's very cool merch, t-shirts.
Do you know what's my favorite T-shirt on my hubby? It falls right.
The
It
Undefeated
sits
Men.
just right. And it looks so masculine. I like it. When he puts that shirt on, I'm like, it's going to be a good day.
Hey, so the big grand prize is the invitation to come here to Tennessee, meet Arden.
He cooks a real good steak too.
Yeah, the founder of Undefeated Men. Get to know him a little bit, and his uncle Cal, who started this. They started this business together. But you bring your father figure, right? Because he will be interviewed on the Undefeated Men podcast and get his story out there. We need more Undefeated Men stories.
Oh yeah, we do.
Transform this world.
Yeah, their slogan is "A good man's never stuck." We want stories. This is The Party with Serene
And Pearl.
Get it right. It's PODDY.
Why? What is it? Why are we all here, Dad? Why did you love America so much?
Well, I love America because it's been a fascinating country to me growing up. I loved American cars. Growing up, I liked those great big V8 Chevrolet, I don't know, Buick, and all the fancy chrome on them, and the great big long sleeky looking bodies with the nice curves and all the rest of it. I loved American cars, and I fell in love with America primarily because of their cars, initially anyway. But I also love America because of its bigness. Coming from a small country like New Zealand, it's a wonderful country, and I don't want to decry it at all. But it's small compared to the nation of America, this great country. And the aeroplanes that they build, and just the big-mindedness, and it's a land of opportunity. And then on top of that, even though to a lot of America they feel that they're a long way from the rest of the world, but I felt America was still close to the rest of the world because it's not far across the Atlantic Ocean until you get to Europe, compared to going down to New Zealand. New Zealand, as most people know probably that are listening and watching this, is far removed from the rest of the world. Just to get to New Guinea or get to some of the northern islands, still got a long way from New Zealand, and then you've got to get all the way over here. It's a long way, especially to the rest of the world. And so I thought that, above Rubies, our magazine that my wife was doing, the girls know all about it. So I'm involved in speaking to the men and the boys, and my wife is involved with speaking to the mothers and the daughters. And so it's a family affair. And I really felt that there was needed to go to the entire world. And America was closer to the world, the United States, than New Zealand, or way down under. You had to fly for hours and hours and hours just to get to, somewhere near the rest of the world. Australia was not that far away, but still a long way away.
And originally your family came from Scotland, right? That's why I love Scotland.
Yeah.
You were Scots that came to New Zealand, right?
Yeah, they were back before my father's time. Actually, his parents and his grandparents, of course, came from Scotland. They say from Ireland, or not exactly Ireland, but Green Island, which was an island off the coast of Scotland. But the family Campbell name is very, very strong in Scotland.
Yeah, we're Campbells.
Yeah,
but you know what? I'd have to say something to you, Dad. I don't know if you knew this, but I remember the meal times, and every night at dinner we'd all have like family conversations, and Dad would talk about America. He's like, one day we're going to go live in America, and I'm going to drive a big car, and he'd tell us all about America. Well, I had this thing in me that I knew one day I would go live in America, and I decided I'm going to marry an American man. I don't want to marry a New Zealand or an Australian man.
I remember you telling me that
We've got
too.
a lot of New Zealand Australian listeners, and I'm sure there's some great guys down there, but I just knew I had to get an American man. And so you instilled that in me, Dad, and by jingos, I did.
Yeah, you got an
Well,
American
I have
cowboy.
to say this about America, the bigness of America, the bigness of her heart
Yeah.
to so many other people around the world. Where would so many nations be if it wasn't for the United States? and it is a leading country in the world. It's sad to see that it's going the way it's going.
Right.
But it's always been an impressive country to me. And I
Impressive,
really felt
yeah.
that we would be coming here and then getting a base here and then moving out from here all across the world. And that's what we've been doing.
Okay, and I love that. But we're going to start back now. You
Yeah.
came from Scotland, not you, but your ancestors, but close ancestors, came and you landed it in...
We got to talk about Scotland being a land of castles.
Yes.
I don't know, it's in my blood.
But I did want to say, though, when you went to New Zealand, you were raised in your Campbell tartan. Like you, all of your sisters and brothers, all 9 of them, they all wore the Campbell tartan. You got on your horse, a bunch of you on the one horse and a bunch of you on another
We wore to
horse.
school Campbell tartan ties.
Yes.
You know, I don't know that all the rest of the children didn't, but we did.
Yeah.
And a cap.
A Campbell tartan.
Cap.
Well, so you guys were on a farm. There was 9 of you guys, right? 9 of you children on a farm, and you were a milking cow farm?
Yes, it was, and a sheep farm.
So what did you
And it had pigs, and it had horses, and it had dogs.
So this
it
is
had
back
everything.
you grew
Chicken.
up in the 1940s, 50s, right?
Yeah, I was born in 1940.
Yeah, so tell us about growing up on that. I remember you told a story about you guys singing, because tell us that one about all of you guys singing could be heard miles away in the
Yes,
milk.
well, my dad milked cows. In fact, you know, the first cows that he ever milked, we were milking them by hand out on the field because Dad had brought this farm, 640 acres, and he spent all his money on buying it. So there was no money for anything else. And so we didn't have a cow shed to milk them in. So we would be milking them out in the field.
Really?
Really, quite
By
something
hand
else.
into buckets.
Yeah, we had a bucket, and we would be holding the cows, and Dad would be milking them. And oh my goodness me, yeah. And it was cold sometimes out there, and we never had the rubber boots. That, you know, we didn't have the money to buy all that, so we were barefoot. And anyway, and we went to school on horseback. Of course,
How far
my
was
first
school?
day at school was as a 5-year-old was on horseback,
With your tartan.
going for miles through
Really?
people's farms, and then finally getting to the school.
Can you
And,
imagine sending off your little 5-year-old on a horse, like go 10 miles
I
to
know.
school?
It was crazy, but that's what we were expected to do it, and we did it. We had these, not big horses, but little horses, small horses, ponies, I suppose.
Yeah.
And we never had a saddle on them. We just had a sack, had just a sack with a belt going around the sack to hold the sack in place, and no place to put your feet.
Really?
And we would be, you know, the older children would have the younger ones behind them. So I always had one behind me.
Yeah.
My next brother to me, Brownie, he was always behind me when we were riding, and then finally he got his own. But yeah, we rode to school. Could tell you about that too. Had a terrible, frightening experience with that. We were, after school, had to go and pick the bread up from the local storekeeper, who carried bread and other things as well. And we were in the middle of a little town called Waitotra in Taranaki province of New Zealand, just north of Wanganui, just, I suppose, east of Wanganui. And and we had to pick the bread up. And he put the bread in a big flour sack of flour, and it was full of loaves of bread. And he was handing it up to us, and round the corner from the right, it was like a T-junction. From that side of the T came these horses, drovers' horses that had been driving. In those days, they would drive stock, you know, for miles, I suppose, on the roads. And there were, I think it was cattle they were driving, maybe. And these horses got loose. Well, the men of those horses, the riders of them, were in the hotel drinking. Oh. But these horses came round the corner, charging around the corner, dogs chasing them at full gallop, and our horse just took off.
With you on
We
it.
were still on it. We were holding the bread, and we were still on it, trying to hold. I was up the front trying to pull the horse in. I could not. And there was a bridge there on the highway, and the cars our horses just charged straight down the middle, through the cars on either side, down the middle. We couldn't control them, and down the highway.
And how many children were there on these horses?
No, there was. I think the others fell off, but we were still holding on.
How
and
old were you? I've never heard this story.
I was probably about 7.
Oh my.
Brownie would have been about 6.
What?
Yeah, and down through this traffic, and then we came to a hill, and we were starting to gallop up the hill, and all these horses were in front of us, and ours was the tail end one. But we were coming up, and a guy came past us in his car, and he yelled out, "Hold on, hold on, hold on!" And he got up on top of the hill and climbed out of his car. And as our horse just galloped past him, he leapt out, grabbed the reins, and pulled our horse in.
Oh my goodness,
Praise be
that's
to
like
God.
a movie.
Wow.
And we got home, and I said to Mum, Mum, she said, "Were you afraid?" And I said, "Mum, was it all right to pray? Would it have been okay to pray while we were riding?" I said, and she said, "Well, did you?" And I said, "No." She said, "Well, you should have." And I said, "We were too afraid."
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, we got home safely with the bread.
Wow.
Oh my
Amazing.
So tell us about that story. I remember that you finally got a milk shed, right? And you would all milk the cows, and because you're a pastor, we grew up pastors' kids, and so many of your brothers and sisters also became pastors.
Yeah.
But you grew up singing, right? And
Yeah.
so what was it? How far away did people hear you in
Well,
town?
our nearest neighbours were a mile away. They, they were managers of a big wealthy farm owner that was next to ours, and they would be a mile away, and we heard the story because we would sing. We would sing songs from the radio. We would sing Christian songs. We would sing anything and everything in the cowshed. Myself and my older sister and my brother Brownie and Peter, and there's the others, younger ones. There was 6 boys in the family, 3 girls. And we would, but anyway, those that were milking the cows would be singing so loud. I don't know. I think the cows milk better when somebody was singing. I don't know. We never thought about that, but we just loved to sing. And the neighbors said that they could hear us a mile away.
Well, we all
Singing
grew
from-
up with
Yeah.
that, Dad, because, all of those children of your brothers and sisters, when a lot of us moved over to Australia,
Yeah.
and we ended up, oftentimes getting together, we'd always, stand around in that big circle and sing.
Yeah.
Sing all
Oh,
the
yeah.
hymns. And I remember looking around thinking, this is abnormal. I've never seen mouths. I've never seen mouths open so wide. I've never seen beet colors so red in faces. And I've never seen lines in the neck so pulled while singing praise songs. And heads totally back looking northward because they're putting so much effort into the
I don't know
into the
what
gusto.
inspired us to do it. I don't know.
But you all
we were
do
doing
it.
it. But even to this very
and
day,
harmonies, and all the cousins could sing too.
even to this very day, I think I'm one of the loudest voices in our
Yeah,
church.
you are, Dad.
One of them.
We've sat here on the party and talked about the Hilltop Church we go to. Dad's retired now, but he still has church in his basement. And Dad's 84, and I like to sing loud too because I feel like it's my
Me too.
genetics. I'm going to sing loud, at the back.
Yeah.
But
I'm
I
glad you
can't
do.
beat my dad. I cannot beat my dad.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
anyway, so we've got that growing up in New Zealand, Dad. So then, when you finally came to America, and Serene
No, but
was
can we go to Australia first? Because he's
okay.
left 2 countries. You've totally changed our family into 2 countries. So from New Zealand, you went to Australia.
Yes, I think we
Took us there.
We felt, number one, Australia was a big neighbour. And about 2.5 hours across the water, right? I think something like that, flying in a big aeroplane. And we went I had travelled over there on my own, just preaching here, there and everywhere, had invitations to go, and came to the Gold Coast of Australia, the Gold Coast, just south of Brisbane in eastern Australia. And so we came there, and I was so fascinated with it, and I just knew in my heart that one day we had to move to that place.
And I want you to talk a bit about that because, you're being a pastor and you brought all of us children over.
6
and you
of us.
raised us, with in this Christian faith in the Sin City of Gold Coast, where you baptized people and half the people were naked on the beach.
They
We
weren't
lived
naked.
behind a
You were
casino.
allowed to be topless. Yeah.
There was a lot of topless.
Yeah, there was a lot of topless.
Yeah, and then we lived
True.
right behind the
Oh, yeah.
casino, but we all had a fantastic upbringing. But you and Mum just
because
you
we were
kept
very,
us-
evangelical. Even though it was Sin City, it was nightclubs everywhere. But I had a vision to start a Christian-type nightclub
Yeah.
there. Remember
That's
that?
a good
Yeah,
story.
that's a good story because that's
And
where
I
the
shared
Newsboys
that with the
came out of.
family long before we got there,
Yeah.
that we were going to run a nightclub there
Yep.
and evangelize people and so on like that. So we actually got there, started the church. That's another thing, but that's another big story.
But we have to tell that story, Dad, because it's so funny. But the end of the story is that those of you, who have followed Christian music and
Yeah.
and all that might have heard of the Newsboys. That was a band formed by my brother, and they came out of that nightclub right there.
Yeah, they came out of that nightclub because Wesley, the eldest son, our eldest son, said, "Dad, remember you talked about having a nightclub here?"
Yeah.
We'd been there a few years by this time, and he said, "Dad, it's time to start that Christian nightclub."
And this was right on the beach.
Yeah.
Right in the
Yeah,
main
right.
downtown
The main
area.
area.
But Dad, it wasn't a funny story at the time, but it is funny now. We need to talk about what happened after you started the nightclub.
Yes.
I remember that night going there. I was 15, I think, 14, 15. And, there were lights.
Pool tables.
There was the band. I think the Newsboys were playing in between. There was music. People would dance. But it was all Christian. I mean, like it was a safe place and Christian music. And people were actually...
People sharing testimonies.
Yes, people sharing testimonies. It was like the Jesus movement in the 70s kind of
Yeah,
thing,
it was.
But then what happened, Dad, it was hard for you, right? Because you'd established this church for several years.
Yeah, and it was somewhat hard because, the boys had put a little triangle light thing.
Strobe.
A triangle up
Yeah.
on the ceiling, just innocently,
Yeah.
and attached lights to it. And somebody knew that the triangle, I don't know, some adults knew that the triangle was a demonic symbol or something or other. And so started giving us a hard time. And then they didn't want drums.
Yep.
They didn't want drums, and they didn't want screaming guitars, electric guitars. They didn't like that. And they thought that we would be desensitizing our young people. And that was the word that they were using, desensitizing.
These were our church members that Dad had, spent many years gathering this quite large church.
Very large.
It was a large church, several hundred people right on the Gold Coast.
Probably more, yeah.
Yeah, we gathered them from the day one. He was an Aboriginal, come Islander or something or other. And he called us up and he said, "Where are you starting?" And I said, "Well, we're going to be at this certain place and we're starting there." He said, "I'm coming."
Yeah.
I don't know how he found out about us, but he turned up. I said, "How will I know you?" He said, "Well, you can't mistake me. You will know me." And sure enough, he turned up and he stayed the night with us because he just needed a house to stay in. So
And I want to get you back to the story, but I do want to interject here. People like this guy turned up and ended up staying in our house. We had many, just as interesting as you'll be describing this guy. And our home was really like a train station because of your evangelical mindset. You just wanted to reach out. So our front door was a revolving door, and people were constantly coming. But
this is a good story.
Yeah.
This man's name was Brian Booker,
No,
right?
Brian Thunderbolt, Israel, something
He
or
had
other.
this strange name. He called himself this name, Brian Israel Thunderbolt Booker. God bless you. He used to say, "Jesus love you. God bless you. God love you. Jesus love you. And I love you." And he'd give you a hug and just about crush you.
Yeah, because he was
so big.
several hundred pounds,
Well,
and he was muscular.
So he came to stay with us the first night he was there. And I coming from a farming background in New Zealand, even though I was a pastor well before leaving, in quite a large church in New Zealand, very good church, wonderful church. The other guy that we had staying with us too was a...
But remember you said he was in and out. He was a bouncer at a nightclub. That was his job.
Yeah, he was a bouncer.
And you told
Yeah,
him
that's
once.
what he said. He said, "What do you do?" And he's like, "I crack people's heads together."
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you had
he
to
was
get
a
really
big,
strong with him
guy.
at once.
He was very powerful.
You had to get really strong with him and point him in the face and say something. What was that?
I could treat him pretty strongly because he respected me. He used to call me Friar.
Yeah.
Friar this and Friar that. He was so funny, really. He was really...
But he became such a close friend of our families. He lived with us many years, didn't he?
Yeah, and I bought him a car, and then he kind of went to his head a little bit, and he kind of was not treating it right. So, and he was starting to misbehave a little bit. And I remember pointing at him and say, "Brian Booker, "Don't you mess with me."
I remember that.
And literally, he was ready to thump me out and wipe me out. He stood there. He was literally shaking, trying to contain his anger, I suppose.
Why do I remember?
But he didn't hit me or anything. He actually was a really good friend.
Why do I remember him and you in the newspaper? I don't know. There was like some kind of picture of him and you in the newspaper.
Yes, we
what
have
was that
pictures
about?
of it because the church was so evangelical and so reaching out. And this nightclub that we had it was called
Genesis Club, right?
what?
Club Genesis.
Club Genesis, yeah. And so people came in. The place was getting packed with young people off the street.
Yeah.
Many of them coming in, and we were just putting on these toasted sandwiches. All the young people were involved in it, sharing little testimonies, playing pool and
Yeah.
playing table tennis or all that kind of stuff. And people were getting saved, which was wonderful. We got to do it again.
I know, but do you remember what happened, Dad? Basically, all our church members left, and you said, I remember that night you said to Mum, what are we going to do? You know, darling, as you always called Mum, darling. And I remember you guys decided to, because your sons had done this, that this was the way you were going to spread God's message even greater. And Dad, I look back at that choice, which was very hard, because you were a pastor, that was your income. And your church was saying, no, we won't have this. And then look at the fruit from today. The Newsboys, I mean, they're still around. They have had tens of thousands of people follow God.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
And they weren't the Newsboys
Oh, yeah.
first. They were,
Yeah.
but we used to call them the Shed Boys.
Yeah.
Because they lived in our shed and would practice all their dance moves for
so
the show.
all the newsboys lived with us.
And they
And
called
that's
you,
kind of
they
why-
called you Mr. C. Remember
That's
that?
kind
Mr.
of
Called
why
me Mr.
we
C,
are
'cause
in America
the
too.
Australians like to shorten
Yeah.
your name.
Because our brother took the Newsboys over here to America to try and get them a record deal, right?
Yeah.
And so we traveled over there because you were doing some ministry, but also to see them and to spend time with our brothers who was
Yeah.
over here, and that just started. And so we never left. We
Yeah.
just stayed here in the US.
It was an amazing story that itself, because the Newsboys came over here and it was a hard time for them.
Yeah.
It was really difficult for them trying to break into a big country like this with a lot of musicians, a lot of bands. Petra was going at the time, Whiteheart, some of these
Yeah.
other big famous bands. And here's the Newsboys, unknown quantity, really, totally unknown, trying to make a position, trying to get into it somehow. And I remember we arrived here to do Evangeline's wedding, actually. Went to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the Newsboys all turned up. They all
Yeah.
turned up in there. They'd brought this old, dilapidated, broken down, I don't know, what would you call it? One of those like RVs.
Oh,
Great
yeah.
big thing. And they put beds in it, bunks, real rough style, 2x4s everywhere. And the whole thing had collapsed just outside Minneapolis. Tires had blown out, the brakes had gone, and it was bad. But they all got to the wedding. And
You have to talk.
Yeah, but we need to call, because you started driving the bus for them once they got a record deal, right?
Yeah.
So you, Mr. C, they'll call
But I
you.
just really want to say one thing before you say that. It was so hard, tough going to get that, to kind of keep all of those different couples that were part of the Newsboys alive, that Wesley, our eldest brother, he almost went paralyzed in the face from the stress of it.
Oh, yes, he
but
did.
he has the same genetics as you, this positive, just get up the next morning and keep going. And they just kept going, and then look what God has done. It's amazing. But I remember Wesley saying once, when Mum was saying to him, Wesley, how are you dealing with all of this? And this is actually once they got quite well known, and they were doing these big tent, big
big blow-up
the CD
tents, big
came
blow-
out, a big tent or big top, one of their,
Yeah, they
The
could put
big
a
top.
semi underneath it.
right, and it was huge, and
And
the
with the
logistics,
speakers.
they'd hired all of these
Platform.
like very professional people to do the logistics of all of this, to put up a big stadium in like an hour, like a big top.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was stressful, and Mum was saying to him, how are you
Yeah,
how are you
'cause the
Because
feeling?
the
wiped it all
winds of
out.
Yes.
Texas
Yes.
just played havoc on those tents.
And Mum was saying, so how are you doing, Wesley, under all the stress? He's like, no stress, Mum, just challenges. Just,
Yeah,
and,
that's
and
exactly
he
right.
got it from you, Dad. That's
Yeah,
been your,
well, when
your
we
mindset.
first came over here, it was not easy for us. We left a really nice, beautiful home on a beautiful canal. And it was very, very beautiful. Great spot. You girls
Oh, yeah.
loved it, right? Swimming
Oh, yeah.
pool.
Welby
fishing.
Street is where we lived, and we named our publishing company after
Yeah.
Welby Street.
Yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And we came to Nashville area, and we just put ourselves up in the cheapest kind of apartment in a not that good a area.
Yes. We didn't have any
We
furniture.
won't go into that, but it was
But we
not,
did have a rebounder. And
car
we
was
sat around
stolen.
the rebounder as our table.
Yes, car was
the
stolen.
car got stolen, yeah.
Yes.
And oh my goodness me, but it was, and then the boys asked me if I would drive for them.
The Newsboys.
Yes. Now
Newsboys.
tell us about the night. It was treacherous. You didn't obey the rules to only drive for a certain amount of time and then rest. These days, and I didn't even know, perhaps there were rules back then that you had to obey and only drive a certain amount of time. Well, not my dad. You just kept driving till you would make it to these places.
I had to do the Guinness Book of Records
Yeah.
on driving, I think. But
So what was the
I would
longest you
drive-
drove?
I would drive. Of course, the buses weren't subject to the road rules of trucks.
Okay.
And so we didn't have to pull over into those inspection stations. We could drive right past. And but I would drive from Monterey Bay, California,
Yeah.
which is high up in California, all the way down till we get to the 40 at Barstow, California, and then drive all the way back without any rest, without any
To
stopping
Nashville.
apart from for fuel. And that would be about 36 hours.
What?
something
Did you-
driving,
were you-
and I would not stop.
Did you
Oh my
hit your
goodness.
face, or how did you do it? What were your little
Yeah,
tactics?
I was. At times I would be whacking my face and trying to keep.
But the boys just trusted you. They're like, how do you sleep knowing Dad's keeping on driving? They're like, oh, we trust
But
Dad.
the boys
He
sometimes,
is the best driver in the world.
You know, as the boys got more money and everything,
Yeah.
I would bring the crew back from away when the tour had ended, you know, and they would go home on a plane.
Yeah.
I would be home a few hours later,
Yeah.
just driven all through.
But
the
tell
day
us
and
about the
I'd-
night. This story is amazing. Where were you with the ice? And
Oh,
I
my
remember you
goodness.
talked about God. God, it's like really, it was amazing what
You
happened.
went to the Holy Spirit for counsel in
Yeah.
the split second. Talk about that story.
Well, the ice, yes. The boys would always get me after their show at night. I remember where we were, if they could find a place out on a mountainside somewhere. We were up in Canada at this time, and we were at, I can't remember the name of the city. It was a well-known city in Canada. And Sunshine was, the Sunshine Ski Resort was not that far away from where this place was. And I remember it about, you know, they finished their show and packed all the trucks up. And they said, Dad, you've got to take us, Mr. C, you've got to take us to Sunshine Ski Resort. So I'm thinking, okay, but by this time it was snowing very, very heavily. So I'm going down, they all went to bed, and I'm driving down the road, you know, towards the big town at the bottom of the mountains. And I drive, and it's hard to see where the road ended and everything. The snow was just pouring down. And I finally got into that place, and I pulled up, and I thought, praise God, I can stay here till the morning time. We'll make our way up to the ski resort. But everywhere I saw, no buses, no commercial buses, no buses are allowed to park here. And so I stopped outside a gas station, and I said, can I leave it here? This is bad weather, the snow's coming down. He said, no, I'm sorry, you have to go up to the resort itself. And so I get out on the road. We had no chains on the wheels. I
And
get
this is
out.
a big Provence, those
And I
big,
never-
huge Provence buses, right? They're huge. The ones that
Yeah.
like Reba McEntire or whatever would have.
Oh,
the
these
big,
great big massive buses, Prevos and stuff like that, Gold Eagles, all sorts of buses. So I get out on the freeway, go down the highway in Canada, and I see the turnoff, and we go along and we start climbing, and the wheels are starting to spin. No
Are
chains.
there sleeping
And
people?
all the guys are asleep back there, and I'm thinking, well, these precious
They've
people.
got wives and babies back home.
Oh, yeah, wives and babies back home, absolutely. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, Lord, what are we getting into here? And we skid right up to the top. And I get up to the top, and I thought, how am I going to get down the other side? Because I couldn't lock the transmission.
Are there drop-offs?
I couldn't lock the transmission
there
in
sheer
a lower
drop-offs on
form.
either
It
side?
wouldn't allow me to do that. So I'd have to use the brakes. And when you put your brakes on, you're going to
Yeah.
start skiing.
Were there drops?
Oh, drop off. goodness knows how many thousands of feet down.
Oh.
It was dangerous stuff. And everywhere was, do not park your bus here, do not stop here. This is an avalanche area. There were so many of them. And then finally, I thought, before I go down the other side, I went down, and then I skied down another side, kind of got the bus, finally got it down there by the miracle, I reckon. And then I'm driving along, and then I thought, no, Lord, I don't want to have to go up again. And sure enough, we have to go up again, another mountain thing, and I'm slipping all the way up there. Finally, I get
handle
up.
it, and you're still sitting here safe, and I can't handle it.
Finally, I get up to the top, and I thought, I'm going to park here. And it said, do not park here, avalanche area. I parked, and I left the engine running, and I lay down on the sofa up the front. But first of all, I got out. I thought, I'm going to check to see if there's any hairpin corner down a little bit, because I wouldn't be able to make it. I thought I'd never be able to get round. I didn't know. So I walked down in the headlights of the bus, and sure enough, there's a sharp corner, you know. And I thought, oh, man, I can't risk it with these guys, you know.
Yeah.
So I pulled up, and I was parked on the side of the road, and after a period of time, knock on the door, and it was a ranger. A ranger turned up in his four-wheel drive
with
pickup
chains.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, are you okay? And I said, not really. I said, I skied down that other side.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm afraid. I said, I can't lower the transmission here. You've only got, you know, one transmission goes all the way through the gears. And I said, so I'd have to use the brakes. And I said, and I'm afraid to use the brakes. It'll lock up or whatever and start skiing. He said, look, just take it 1 inch at a time. 1 inch, but you can't park here. Just do it 1
He was
inch at a
almost
time.
wanting to murder you guys.
Well,
all
It
he
these
took me
had
a
to do
long
what
time
he
to
was-
get to the bottom, but
Yeah,
I
but
finally
still,
got
this is
down.
life and death.
And I
Yeah.
finally got to the resort.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, but I remember you telling this story to us, and you were saying that it was just it came to you in that moment, like the Lord had given you this download
Yeah,
on.
there was another time we were going up from New Mexico up to Colorado, and you have to go up a mountain pass, and I never twigged when I got into the gas station. Oh, I saw all these cars parked there, and I think, why are all these cars and trucks? I thought, anyway, I'll get gas, and I put gas in, and I got out on the freeway and started up, and I start climbing up this mountain, getting up to the top, getting up there, and I see all these cars parked on this very dangerous section as you reach the summit, getting up towards the summit. And I'm pulling this bus up, and I had to stop behind the cars, and it starts sliding backwards.
well, there was
It
ice.
slipped. The whole bus is
Yes.
slipping backwards. And I'm thinking, Lord, what am I going to do? This is the time when I
Yeah.
really got a download from the Lord.
Yeah.
And I thought, what am I going to do?
And is
The
there
brakes,
big,
I'm
is there
standing on
big
the brakes. There's no
drop-offs
way
too?
because you can't do anything.
Are there drop-offs in this story?
Oh, a massive drop-off on one side and then guardrails on the other. And I thought I'd better back it into the guardrails.
Yeah.
You know, at least it might save us there. But even then, on the other side of the guardrails, there's also a drop-off. And so, I felt
And
the
you're
Lord tell me,
standing on
and
the
I felt the
brakes.
Lord
Oh,
tell
my
me,
goodness.
put your foot on the accelerator, take your foot off the brakes, and accelerate the wheels, and you might break through the ice, or you'll break through the ice. And I did. I had that engine roaring, and the wheels are spinning, and finally it stopped.
So hold on, you were falling down the mountain
Well,
basically.
it was slipping down the road, slipping down the highway on this treacherous,
Yeah.
steep
Where you
area.
can't even steer going backwards.
And, you know,
like that.
and
Yeah.
it all happened
So
pretty quickly.
instead of braking as you think you should, you were
You couldn't hold it with the brakes because it
Okay.
was just slipping.
okay. Then
And
you
so I had to brake
accelerated.
through the ice. It was slipping on the ice. So to get traction, I had to
Okay.
brake through. So spinning the wheels fast caused it to get through the ice.
And so then
Oh,
you
to
were
melt
able
it.
to stop.
And I was able to stop.
Oh
To
my
melt
goodness.
And I
it.
sat there frozen in the wheel at the wheel of the bus, scared to move because I thought this thing could start off again.
Yeah.
You know,
I had to. Oh, you finished that.
I
Finish.
used to think you guys have. When Wesley came up, finally my son came up, your eldest, your brother, came up and said, "Dad, what's going on? Your motor's roaring away. What's going on?" And I said, "You guys have no idea what you put your father through."
No, I remember once you telling me another story, and we'll have to move on to different stories, but you're telling me this other story about driving the bus that the brakes went out. going down some,
Oh, that
going
was
down
not me.
a hill.
I wasn't driving at that point.
Oh,
No,
okay.
that was a newsboy story.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a newsboy story. They actually had a truck, was a broken down truck in Australia.
Yeah.
And they were going down this steep hill, and there was a crossroads at the bottom of the
Yeah.
hill, and it was highways, not freeway, highway. And they were coming down, and the brakes went out, and they could not stop the bus. It was a box truck.
Freezer truck, wasn't
but
it?
the boys
Yeah.
were sleeping in the box truck at the back. And
With no windows.
no windows. And Wesley's going straight. He said, there's no way we could stop it. He said, we came to the crossroads and there was cars coming by. And he said, we just shot straight through.
Oh my goodness.
You know, I
He
want
said, I don't know, cars just closed.
I want to go way back now, Dad. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like we've been so blessed, and I feel God's hand on our lives as children. I mean, He's protected us. He has so blessed us and enabled us to have a platform, a voice, all of us children, and amazing things have happened. But you've always told us, and I really believe this is true, we had a great-grandmother who all she would do in the last years of her life was pray for the coming generations. Could you tell us about her?
Yes, well, you know, I didn't know her personally, but my mother talked about her. And my mother didn't know her as well as my dad did, of course. But she lived to the age of 96, and she was around about 96 when and I was just a little baby, a little boy, and she came to visit us. But she'd be praying in her rocking chair. She'd be praying for everybody. I mean, she was an intercessor. She'd come from a family. Her husband was owned a brewery. So he was a bit of a, well, goodness knows what. I haven't found out too much about him. He wasn't a famous guy. But my grandmother was, in my mind, is a very famous woman. Or my dad's grandmother. Anyway, so, you know, she would, and Dad would come home. Dad was a bit of a heathen at that time. His parents had died. His dad had died an alcoholic. His mother had died with a bad heart situation, and he was just very young, and he was just kind of dragged up by an old uncle that was pipe smoking and blaspheming. I don't know whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, but he was, anyway, was kind of dragged up by that old uncle. But Dad came to the Lord basically through this great grandmother who was always praying, always interceding for people, and Dad had us, you know, he was seeking the Lord. I can't go into the whole story. It was just a powerful story, but I don't think you have time. But, you know.
But she would always pray for what?
She would pray for this is the thing, and this is why we have such a great God-blessed family with, you know, able to accomplish so many different things. And it's so with pretty much everybody in the family, really everybody in the family. And so... And I have to put it down. This mother was always praying, and my mom said to me that this grandmother was always praying for something special. And I said, Mom, what was that? What was it? And I was by this time a young pastor, and really gung-ho and pushing into God. And I said, Mom, please tell me, what was the special thing? She said, she was always praying, she said, for future generations.
Wow.
She said she would go around praying for individuals and then come back to future generations. Now that was, she must have been inspired by God to be praying for future generations. Because I am what I am, I'm sure, because of that praying grandmother. I'm married to this wonderful lady that I've got because of her, I reckon. You know, she prayed for, and you girls are what you are because of her, I'm sure. Because she was praying, she didn't know our names, but she was praying for the future generations. And so many in the family, and my brothers and sisters and their families, and have been so blessed because of that woman's prayers.
No, it's literally, when you think about it, a miracle. I mean, so many of us cousins, you know, of our generation, you know, have just been, you know, so drawn toward ministry. I think about our offspring now, you know, Evangeline's son Zadok, who they're going to war-torn Burma right now. I mean, going to live in the jungle to try and help people. I mean, this prayer that she had, is absolutely being lived out.
Yeah.
Being lived out. 4 generations from that.
Yeah.
5. It's literally incredible, Dad. It gives me goosebumps because that woman, your dad was an alcoholic. His dad before him was an alcoholic, and yet she prayed for you guys.
My dad was not an alcoholic,
he wasn't.
but his dad before him was.
Yeah.
And but Dad came to the Lord. He was a rough diamond. He didn't believe in God.
Yeah.
He got talked out of believing in God by educated cousins that he had, and they'd been brought up to believe there was no God, and so. But Dad had this dream one night, and he was, he had actually, I think, had been given a Bible by one of his sisters who was like this grandmother, like this lady, always praying. Or I think she had carried the mantle on from this great grandmother. She was Aunt Anne. I called her Aunt Anne.
Great
She was
Auntie
always
Anne.
praying,
Yeah.
always praying, and so. She had given Dad many Bibles. He had destroyed them. But this one Bible was a very, very beautiful Bible. And Dad said, I can't destroy this one.
Yeah.
I better read it. So he's reading it, and he's out where they're falling trees and all that stuff. And
He was a tree fella, right?
Yeah, they were falling trees and sawmilling and all that. And Dad was out there. And he'd been reading to all the men. All the men, they were all, just worldly men, but reading them from the Bible that his sister had given him. And then he gets into the city one night and forgets to bring the Bible with him, and he's staying in a hotel, and he thought, if only I brought that Bible, I would just like to read some more of it. And he said, I know what I'll do. If there is a God, and I don't think there is, but if there is a God, I'm going to spend one night trying to get to heaven. And then I'll be able to look God straight in the eyes and say, God, you're right about me being a sinner, but at least I spent one night trying to find you, one whole night. So he said, I'm memorizing old Sunday school songs. And he said, and I'm trying to think of them. And he said, I fell asleep. And he had this dream. And in the dream, he's dying. He's dying because he's supposed to have murdered somebody or something. And so they're going to hang him. They're going to hang my dad. They got the hang noose and everything there. And Dad remembered that in the English culture that we've been brought up in from way back the motherland, England, they had this thing, it was law that if you hung a person and they didn't die the first time, you hung them the second time they didn't die, and the third time they didn't die, they'd go free. They were meant to live. And he said, they asked me one final question, who would I want there? And I said, my grandmother. I want my grandmother. And in the dream. And he said, they got her, but she couldn't come in. I could hear her praying outside the prison walls. I hear her praying earnestly for me. And he said, they pulled the bolt and I floated down. Hung me again and I floated down. And again and I floated down and I was set free. And he said, I woke up from my dream and gave my heart to Jesus.
Wow.
Incredible.
Yeah,
That's
amazing
amazing.
So,
story.
Dad, you
That's
as a young
amazing.
man, you grew up on the farm and then became a pastor. I mean, we grew up pastors because it's all we ever knew of what you were doing. Why did you become a pastor, and was Billy Graham involved in your own personal conversion? Was that it, or no?
Yes, in a way he was, I suppose, but I had actually found the Lord before I heard Billy Graham. But Billy Graham, I loved Billy Graham.
Did you ever get to one of his crusades when he came to New Zealand?
Yes, he came to New Zealand. I was probably way back in the 50s, I guess. I was born in 1940, so I would have been just a young teenage boy when he came. And the first time he came twice that I could remember of. And the whole country was basically moved by that man. There was something in the air. It was an atmosphere that came into the air. And all New Zealanders, New Zealand's like Canada.
Yeah.
Were not that many people going to church. Very few people. Very highly educated, got everything they want. It's not a backward country. It's great. It's got great education, got everything. Beautiful scenery and all. The people came out of the woodwork to go, and everybody wanted to hear Billy Graham. For some reason, they wanted to hear Billy Graham. They weren't church attenders. They wanted to go hear Billy Graham. And I was very impressed by that man. As a young guy, I was very impressed by him. He had an anointing on his life. He had something there that was very, very electrifying. In fact, you could feel it in the atmosphere. You literally could feel it. And so it was an amazing experience. But I went, and the second time he came was similar to the first time. Just fantastic.
But why did you become a pastor then? I've never.
I don't
asked
know.
him that.
I
Why?
became a pastor as I
Yeah,
kind
I
of,
wanna talk to you.
as I, when I did become a Christian, when I did give my heart to Jesus, I struggled for a while and in my teenage years and all the rest of it. But as I got around about 17, 18, the Lord really got hold of me. And I just knew I wanted to be a preacher. And even though I was not gifted, I would naturally.
I want you to tell the
Yes.
story because
As we end.
Well, I've got. I want to have a little tiny bit after this
Okay.
too of some things I want to pull around to. I don't think they mind going a little longer with such an awesome guy sitting here.
Pass
but
me that note that Nate just gave
you know, your brother, you said, had the gift of the gab.
Yeah.
He could just, speak anything.
Oh, yeah.
But you said, and you do now, it's been a gift given to you by the Lord, but you said naturally you were very shy about speaking.
Oh,
and
man,
then tell about
was I
that
ever.
story, that pispitality story, because I think that's hilarious and I've told it so many times.
Yeah, well, that one, or when the person said,
Well, there's two.
okay, but you got to do the other one first, you little sis. Okay, one of the first times you spoke, right? You got up and then you went to the back of the room.
Okay,
Talk
yeah,
about
talk
what
about
happened,
that
because
one.
that's a better story to start with.
Well, I got to the back of the room.
And you heard somebody say
I
something
wish
about,
that guy
yeah,
but you
remember?
start at the beginning.
You were speaking one of your first times you got to preach, and then you went to the back and you heard somebody say something about the guy that preached.
Oh, yes. I wanted to preach. So I went to this open air meeting in another city, not the one that we normally were in, but another one outside our city. And I was standing there in the crowd. And the guy that was up on the platform, I knew him and he knew me, but I was not a preacher. And in fact, I was the worst preacher. And so he pointed at me and he said, Colin Campbell, would you come up here and tell everybody what Jesus Christ means to you? And I'm thinking, whoa, I don't know how I can do this. I don't know how I can do this. I was so shy. I was so timid. I was awful. And finally, I made my way up there and I thought, I'll just say John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. But I couldn't say it like that. I made a fool of myself saying it. It was so bad, I felt sorry for myself. I felt so sorry for myself. And I got down with my tail between my legs, as you might say, like a dog, got down and whimpered my way back into the back of the crowd. And I was back
And it
there.
was dark, right?
Yeah. The lights were on where the trailer was, and the street lights were on, and the trailer headlights. I got back away from the crowd in the dark where nobody could see me. And a man walks up to me. He doesn't know I'm the guy that's just got down. And he walks up to me and he said, isn't it a pity? He said that they don't put on people or somebody that knows what they're talking about. And that was me.
And I know
That was
Dad,
me, and I felt so bad. I went home, and I had this cry within my spirit to become a preacher, to become a pastor or whatever. And I had this thing happening within my spirit, but to get there was just impossible, really impossible.
But look what God's done.
Yep, and I mean, and then that night, and I opened my Bible, and there it was, for with man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Just came out to me like
Wow.
that. And soon after that, almost immediately after that, things started to happen.
And what was that pispitality thing? Because that's funny.
That was another one. I was taking a young guy out. He was just like a guy learning from me.
Yeah.
And I was taking him out for his first preaching. He was going to preach something too. And I said to him, listen, I have to start this thing, and then you can. And I was sharing about hospitality, because we love hospitality.
Yeah.
We always have. Our home's like a hotel,
Yeah.
even to this day. So, and I'm talking about hospitality this, hospitality that, hospitality. And I said to him, you can make faux pas,
Yeah.
And I said, don't worry if you make a faux pas. It's okay.
This is before you went up.
And before I went there, before I got there, and I made the biggest faux pas, and I didn't say hospitality, I said pispitality.
How
And
many
there were
times?
people on the front row. There was a whole row of ladies there, and they cracked up. They were screaming with laughter. They couldn't control.
How many
and the more
times
they
did you
tried,
say
the more they
hospitality?
tried to contain themselves, the worse it was. I had to finish the meeting.
Did you know that you'd said hospitality?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Hey, but you know,
I tried to bring it back, and I couldn't.
Dad, I want to end with this because we're at an hour. You know,
It could be an hour and 15 because I've got
well,
some
no,
things
yeah,
to say.
okay, but I want to go to where I wanted to kind of go the whole time, which is to me, and I think to
I
Serene
have to go
too.
pee-pee though.
Oh, just hold it.
No, I got to go. I had tea.
Okay.
Keep talking.
Yeah, I'll just keep talking. So, you know, to me, the one thing that I've known about you, and I have to say, you know, you took us to the Gold Coast and it was crazy with nightclubs and not the place where you'd take children to grow up in a safe place, but, you know, we did. And that's where really I kind of found my walk with God. But, you know, I always knew the sincerity and the fervence of your own work with God. What kept me and what made me know that God was real was seeing you and Mum live it out in reality, sincerely. It wasn't just something that you preached, it was something that you lived. But another thing about you that I have just been, you know, admired or tried to learn from my whole life is your absolute faith that God will work it out. Like, you know, that thing in the Bible you said you were a terrible preacher, right? And then you looked and said, but with God all things is possible.
Yeah.
That's what you've always absolutely believed. If someone's sick, you're there praying. You're the first one and you're believing. You know, if something goes wrong, it's like, that's okay, Pearl. God will provide. God will intervene. God will do this. And I've watched you go through challenge after challenge after challenge and just
But
your
can I tell some of those challenges?
yeah,
Can
your
I
faith is
interrupt and say?
unwavering. Talk about the
Well, I just remember once you coming home from driving for the Newsboys. 'Cause
I'm
you
going
didn't-
pee-pee now.
You didn't just do one job. You always did so many. So you were driving for the Newsboys, but you were also pastoring too. Whenever you were home, you'd pastor. And so we were living in the roof of the church that you would pastor, so that when you on the Sundays you were home, you would take over for the preacher and preach whatever. But I remember you were kind of fixing up the church too, so you were on the steeple high up, painting it. And I remember it was an old steeple and it had rotten and you didn't realize, and you fell from the roof.
Well, actually, I'll tell you
Tell me the
exactly
story.
what happened.
Yes,
there.
you tell me
No,
the
I
story.
wasn't up on the roof. Actually, I was
Oh.
on the ground, but we had some fellow New Zealanders had come over. I didn't know them. They just found the Lord before getting on the plane to come over.
Oh, wow.
Somehow they found that there was a New Zealander living in the direction and within the area where they were in Nashville at that time. They'd only just arrived from New Zealand. They were just straight off the streets in New Zealand, just found the Lord.
Yeah.
And so they said, do you have a job for us to do?
Yeah.
And I thought this church needed painting, you
Yeah.
know. So they started with the steeple up on top. So they were up there, and Everett Lang was up there with them, you know, the owner of the place. And they found that the steeple was a big steeple.
Huge, I remember.
And it was rotting. They said, we have to get it down to repair it and then paint it, fix it. So they got it off its position, and it was a steep roof, and they got it to the edge of the roof, and it's still a long way down.
Oh, 20
They
feet.
got it to
probably.
the edge of the roof where
25 feet.
the guttering would be,
Yeah.
but there was no guttering there. And they got it there, and they said, Colin, this is not good, because they said it's breaking up and we can't hold it, it's too heavy. Can you come up the ladder? Because they'd got it onto the edge of on top ledge of the ladder, and they're going to lower it down the ladder like with a rope around it and hold it. And they said, can you come up and try and hold it as we lower it down? I put my head up inside the steeple, and I could see big 4-inch nails sticking out everywhere. And I'm freaking out a little bit myself, but I'm holding it with all my might,
Blindly, because you got your head inside
and the
of
rope
it.
breaks, and the
Yeah.
whole thing crashes me down on
Yeah.
the ground.
On your
at
tailbone.
the bottom.
Yeah.
And I felt the searing pain just shoot through my spine. And I thought, man, I've broken my spine.
Yeah.
It's just like was right that, bam, like
Yeah.
that. And I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
And finally, I could feel I could wiggle my toes, and and eventually I got up, and I thought, I'm gonna get through this thing.
Yeah.
I grabbed the paintbrush and the paint, and I get to the window, and I'm starting to paint the jolly thing.
Well, most people would be in the ambulance on the way to the hospital.
I'm nearly dying as I'm doing it. It's getting more and more painful, so bad. And then the pastor guy, the other guy that was pastoring there with me, he said, I'll take you home. We've got a hot tub there, and we'll put you in the hot tub. Yeah. Maybe it'll help. And for about 1 minute, it just relieved it straight away. But then that next minute, it just came crashing back. It was unbelievable.
I remember it being months, Dad. I remember you sitting at the dining room table. You'd be like, I remember you just breathing through the pain, but you did not let it stop you. You were filled with joy. You still got up every day and did work, but you were...
I never let anything stop me.
They wanted to put you in traction.
I remember that time when I was driving the Newsboys bus and I broke my leg in a big car accident on the way to drive the bus.
Remember that.
And I drove that bus with a busted knee all night. Got home and went to the hospital, and they said, you've broken your leg there.
Yeah. And I remember when you were going through that terrible backache pain, it was the same time that you were going to move out to here, the hilltop.
Yeah.
And you needed to have an immediate office for above Rubies for Mum. So you couldn't go through the building process waiting for things to be built, and we had to get out of the church. So you were in the church at the time, and you were trying to work out how you were going to have this big basement where we could do church, and then stick a whole modular home on top of this basement. Yeah. And it had never really been done before. And
down here in the south. In the north it was, right? And no one would do it for you.
And I remember
they
you
didn't want to do it
never giving up. And you were like, no. And I think you worked out a way to do it with yourself and
we were
cranes
going to put the basement under the ground, but the ground was too hard to the guy was breaking hoses trying to dig it. And I said, just stick the thing on top. We'll put windows in it. We'll put a front door in it. Stick it on top of the ground. So it'll be 2-story. And finally, even the guys, we got a massive crane onto the front.
Because nobody would do it for you.
The crane itself sank before it even picked the thing up. I mean, it was sinking into the ground on the front lawn there.
But you couldn't get professional companies to do it for you, right? You had to just do yourself.
Well, I did get a professional company in the end. They came with this massive crane. But the people that were selling us the house, this modular home, they were standing gasping, like, this guy's crazy. They didn't want to have one of their homes advertise that it went up on a place like this. So we got it up, and it's about 10 foot up there, those concrete blocks we put down on the side of the basement area, but it was not a basement anymore. It was now on top of the ground, like a regular house.
Yeah.
And they craned that thing way up into the air. 2 halves,
Yeah,
we got pictures of it.
Yeah, so it's basically, that's where Mum and Dad live now. That's where we go to the Hilltop Church. It's basically a huge double wide, or was it a triple wide, on top of this concrete thing, and it's there. So somebody said it couldn't be done, but our dad said they would do it, right?
Yeah, we could do it. So I've never accepted the fact it can't be done.
Yeah.
Things can be done. You got to try it.
So, talking about you never saying, well, you can never do that. Remember our first book, Trim Healthy Mama, and Serene and I wrote this too long book that was 680 pages or something, and everyone told us, well, no one will ever buy it. And we were like, well, okay, we'll give away a few copies, and we had all this good advice from everybody, and it was basically the book that should never have sold and should never have worked, but somehow it did. But I remember Dad saying, oh no, Pearl, it'll be great. It'll go. So you kind of inspired this in us, that you can do crazy, impossible things that no one else thinks will work.
Exactly. And you had a couple of stories.
You girls did that, and maybe have passed a little bit on that positive thing. You can do it, and you gone way beyond what I could have ever dreamed you could go to.
You said you had a couple of stories about, nothing, is impossible. You just never say it can't be done. Can you quickly share just a couple, just to...
Yep. Yes, I can. When it's cold, when it's icy, when it's snowing, I just can't stay at home. I just have to get out. And we've got some steep hills around here. Pretty dangerous driving. Mom is freaking out like crazy, but I just have to get out there. And I have to prove it can be done. I just have to do it. It's just something within me. So she says, has to be. And I do it, And just recently I got a Range Rover out here, and I needed a tow bar on the back. What's the point of having a Range Rover without a tow bar?
Yeah.
But this thing was not made for a tow bar. So I got underneath it, and I found out there was a little towing, a kind of a U-joint thing made of solid steel, very strong. So you could, if the thing had gone overboard, they could tow it back up or whatever off the road. And I thought, this is a great spot to put a tow bar here. I took it to engineers. Engineers would not do it. I took it to friends. They would not do it. Nobody would weld anything on there. Nobody would do it. So I thought, I'm doing it. I'm going to do it no matter what they say. And I cut the thing, and I got it in there, and I got the right steel. I had to get the right steel, and I did it. Today I've got a tow bar on that thing.
I love
Nobody's
it.
going to talk me out of it.
And I remember when we first moved to the hilltop, you did dig some wells, but they ran dry after just a little bit, and you had to pull water for this huge group of people that live with you guys at your house constantly, and the church that you have on Sunday. It's a long way from the house, and it was over mountains, or not mountains, but hills and valleys. And at your age, went out and you laid all the pipe and dug.
Yeah, how far away? The water that you get now for your house, I remember this. Everyone said, well, that's crazy. It was like a mile down this steep hill. You were going to bring it up from a spring, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you get your water now.
Yeah, well, we put in this regular white piping, that you put inside your house, But you've got to remember that most houses are insulated, but I never figured I'd not come from a country where you had to do that kind of thing, New Zealand. But anyway, and the pipes were always bursting.
Yeah.
And, oh, my goodness, the amount of piping that I replaced and then put insulation over it, put a bigger pipe over it, and it still broke down all the time.
Yeah.
Finally, we got it right. Finally we got it dug in under the ground, and then we had big rocky areas to go over and put, special piping over top of piping, and finally got it in.
And that's been your project for probably 2 decades now, that water, and you never give up. And you'll be down there after church in your suit, climbing over the rocks and
People
fixing
used
the
to
water.
say, oh, there's Mr. Campbell. He's driving around in his suit on his tractor.
Yeah, that's
But,
really that's.
I would do it because it was an emergency or something.
Yeah, but that is who you are, really. That's a good
But
picture.
anyway, I'm not the greatest guy.
You're a guy. You are. You're a guy that likes to get stuck in.
I've got a lot of faults.
But you like to get stuck in fancy
Yeah.
you're always in your suit. You've got your jeans on today, which is not your usual self. You usually got your penguin outfit, your white shirt and your suit. But I remember some reason I was staying out in the lounge, and I don't know why. I wasn't in my bedroom. I don't know why, but you came out in the middle of the night to get a drink of water, and you had your suit coat on. You put your suit coat on to just come out of your room and get your drink of water. I always saw you in your suit coat.
Oh,
we-
yeah.
we
Well,
feel
I always
blessed.
say, look, I've even said it to my daughters,
Yeah.
you girls, and Vange and everything. Make the best of what you've got. Whatever God's given you, make the best of it. I've always said that, and I've always felt it. And I think you girls do. You absolutely do. And and I appreciate that. And I think that's for everybody. I say it to men too. When you've done a day's work or whatever, go home, clean up, tidy up, put some nice clothes on, and come to the meal table.
Yeah.
Always, make yourself look charming for your wife.
Yeah.
Did it before you got married. Keep doing it.
I know, and I do have to. We'll end with this. Is that another thing we've been inspired, and we just kind of what we call skiting down under. Skiting is when you really share all the good things about someone in your family usually. And Dad says he has a lot of faults. I don't see them. You were such a great father to us. So we're just sharing you with our mamas today, and just sharing what we grew up with. But one thing I am most blessed about is your relationship with Mum. How many years have you've been married?
60, almost 61.
61 years, and I have to say, it is such a romantic relationship.
Oh, it's hot to try.
I mean, you and Mum, you're not just committed; you're in love.
Yeah.
You're in love, and you see it, and you show it. And I've been inspired by that. My children are inspired
And
by
I
that.
remember Dad saying to me, sometimes we'll be sitting there somewhere in the mall and Mum will walk over. I remember when we first came to America, we're at the mall. Mum was walking over out of some shop. He's like, look at that woman, Serene. Look at her. She's redhead and she's striking.
Dad
Look
always
at
says
that
she's
striking.
Well,
woman."
what is it? Can you leave the listeners with? I mean, what has been the key, the thing for yours and Mum's marriage? Why are you so close to this day?
Well, I do believe with my whole heart and soul, of course, the Lord is
Yes.
the number one thing, but even people that have the Lord sometimes lack in this. I think that you should always, love your wife with everything you have. And we do. I do say to I think the older I get, the more I'm this way. I think when I was young, I was probably a little bit, probably a little bit too full of myself. But as I got older, I began to realize, look, tell your wife and please your wife as much as you possibly can. Just tell how much you love her every day and pile it on. Don't be half-hearted about it. I'm constantly complimenting her. Always complimenting her all the time. I do it day by day and nighttime by nighttime. So I'm always complimenting her. And I do believe, every woman needs some of that. I think every woman needs it. They need to have a complimenting husband that will always, and their children do too. Children need to have the father that will constantly be complimenting and speaking positive things into their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what you did to us, and it had an impact, Dad. It really did. So we want to thank you for coming today, and it's been fun. It's been fun with the stories, and we love you, and now all of our listeners and viewers on YouTube can get to know you a bit.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you all. God bless.